Good morning, and thank you all for joining us today for Connected Florida's BEAD Program Challenge Process webinar. Before we get started, I want to announce that this webinar is being recorded, and we will have the recording with closed captioning posted to our website at www.floridajobs.org/broadband within 2 business days. My name is Leo Garcia, and I serve as the Director of Connected Florida, also known as the Office of Broadband here at Florida Commerce. I am joined today with Mr. Jacob Sostrom, our Broadband Policy Coordinator, Ms. Erin Alford, our Local and Team Coordinator, and Mr. Joshua Hoadley, our GIS IT Coordinator for the Office of Broadband. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat feature at the end of the presentation. If questions do not, please email them to broadband@commerce.gov. Your questions and comments are integral to the success of the program. They will assist Florida Commerce with developing our living FAQ document, which is currently posted on our website. Additionally, closed captioning is enabled in the webinar. If you are in need of closed captioning, please ensure you have closed caption enabled in your settings. As you may know, Connected Florida administers programs to expand and enhance broadband connectivity statewide. The office is very excited for today's webinar as it marks a major milestone in the BEAD program as we work towards program launch. In our presentation, we'll be giving an overview of Florida's BEAD program. We will discuss the role that local governments and local technology planning teams will play in assisting Florida Commerce in administering Connected Florida's BEAD program. We will discuss the eligible challengers, the types of challenges, the challenge process timeline, how to obtain a CostQuest license, and how to use the portal to submit a challenge. The challenge process is crucial to ensuring that Florida Commerce has the most accurate information regarding Florida's served, unserved, and underserved populations. Florida Commerce has been tasked with administering Connected Florida's BEAD program to bring broadband internet to all Floridians and help close the digital divide. The state of Florida has received a $1.6 billion allocation from the National Telecommunication and Information Administration, also known as the NTIA, for Florida Connected BEAD program. The funding can be used on infrastructure deployment, adoption and use activities, and allowable non-deployment activities such as workforce development. On November 15, 2023, Florida Commerce uploaded Connected Florida's BEAD Initial Proposal Volume 1 on the Connected Florida's website. On November 22, 2023, Connected Florida's BEAD Initial Proposal Volume 2 was uploaded to the website to accept public comments. Florida Commerce received 59 public comments covering a range of topics, including the challenge process, low-cost pricing, sub-grantee selection, and service area design. Additionally, we received feedback from the NTIA. On December 27, 2023, our office submitted an updated Connected Florida BEAD Initial Proposal Volume 1 and Volume 2 to include the public comments and the NTIA's feedback. On May 21, 2024, Connected BEAD Initial Proposal Volume 1 was approved by the NTIA. The challenge process allows eligible challengers to challenge Florida Commerce's maps of broadband serviceable locations, also known as BSLs, for ability. We will only accept challenges from units of local government, Florida's federally recognized tribes, internet service providers, and nonprofit organizations. The office will only accept certain challenge types, including community anchor institutions, also known as CAIs, for eligibility, Connected Florida's BEAD eligibility for existing BSLs, and enforceable commitments and planned services. The challenge process will occur in 4 phases over the course of 120 calendar days. The first phase is the publication of locations eligible for Connected Florida's BEAD funding. These locations are currently published on our website and are designated as locations served, unserved, or underserved. The second phase is the challenge submittal phase. During this phase, the challenger will submit the challenge through Florida Commerce's challenge portal. Provider whose service availability and performance is being challenged will receive an email which will include information regarding the period of time available for a response. Challengers will have 45 days from the commencement of the challenge submittal process to submit a challenge. The third phase is the rebuttal phase. Providers will have 45 days from the commencement of the challenge rebuttal process to submit a rebuttal. The rebuttal period will begin after the challenge submission buffer period and commence with an automated email sent to the providers that have been challenged. The final phase is the determination phase. The challenge determination phase will run concurrently with the rebuttal phase and extend an additional 15 days beyond the close of the rebuttal to finalize rebuttals received. Rebuttals will occur on a rolling basis as challenges and rebuttals are received. Now we'll pass it over to Jacob and Aaron to discuss the types of challenges and rebuttals for the BEAD challenge process.
Thank you, Leo. There are 7 types of challenges that are accepted during the BEAD challenge process. Those 7 types include availability, technology, enforceable commitment, planned service, not part of enforceable commitment, location is a CAI, and location is not a CAI. There are 3 ineligible types of challenges that will not be accepted during the BEAD challenge process. Those 3 types include speed, latency, and data capacity. First type of challenge is availability. An availability challenge means that the broadband service identified is not actually offered at the location, including a multiple dwelling unit or MDU. Acceptable evidence for an availability challenge includes a screenshot of the provider's webpage, a service request was refused within the last 180 days, a lack of suitable infrastructure, for example, no fiber on a pole, a letter or email dated within the last 180 days that a provider failed to schedule a service installation or offer an installation date within 10 business days of a request, or a letter or email dated within the last 180 days indicating that a provider requested more than the standard installation fee to connect, or that a provider quoted an amount in excess of the provider's standard installation charge in order to connect service to a location. Acceptable rebuttal evidence from a provider for an availability challenge includes the provider shows that the location subscribes or has subscribed within the last 12 months. An example would be a copy of a customer's bill. If the evidence was a screenshot and believed to be an error, a screenshot that shows service availability would need to be shown. Or the provider submits evidence that service is now available. An example, a copy of an order sent to the location. Next is a technology challenge. A technology challenge occurs when the technology indicated for the location is incorrect. Acceptable evidence for a technology challenge includes the manufacturer and model number of the residential gateway, or CPE, that demonstrates it's delivered through a specific technology. Acceptable rebuttal evidence from the provider includes the provider presenting countervailing evidence from their network management system showing an appropriate residential gateway that matches the provided service. Next is an enforceable commitment challenge. An enforceable commitment challenge occurs when the challenger has knowledge that broadband will be deployed at the location in question by the date established in the deployment obligation. Acceptable evidence for an enforceable commitment challenge includes proof of an enforceable commitment by a service provider. An example would be an authorization letter. In the case of tribal lands, the challenger must submit the requisite legally binding agreement between the relevant tribal government and the service provider for the locations at issue. Acceptable rebuttal evidence for an enforceable commitment challenge includes documentation that the provider has defaulted on the commitment or is otherwise unable to meet the commitment. An example is no longer a going concern. Now, I will hand it over to Aaron to discuss the other types of challenges and rebuttals.
Thank you, Jacob. We will now discuss the planned service. A challenger can file a planned service challenge when the challenger has knowledge that broadband will be deployed at this location by December 31st, 2024. Without an enforceable commitment, or provider is building out broadband offering performance beyond the requirements of an enforceable commitment. The acceptable evidence for a planned service challenge includes construction contracts or similar evidence of ongoing deployment, along with evidence that all necessary permits have been applied for or obtained. Contracts or a similar binding agreement between Florida Commerce and the provider committing that planned service will meet Connected Florida's BEAD definition and requirements for reliable and qualifying broadband. even if not required by its funding source, like a separate federal grant program, including the accepted date deployment will be completed, which must be on or before December 31st, 2024. The acceptable rebuttal evidence for a plan includes documentation showing that the provider is no longer able to meet the commitment. Example is a corporation no longer in business, or that the planned deployment does not meet the required technology or performance requirements. Now, not part of an enforceable commitment, this challenge will occur when the challenge location is in an area that is subject to an enforceable commitment to less than 100% of locations, and the location is not covered by that commitment. For more information, please visit Connected Florida's BEAD Notice of Funding Opportunity. The acceptable evidence will include declaration by service provider subject to the enforceable commitment. There is no acceptable rebuttal evidence for this kind of challenge. Now, if a location is a CAI, this challenge type allows a challenger to claim that the challenge location should be classified as a CAI. The acceptable evidence this challenge type includes evidence that the location falls within the definitions of CAIs set by Florida Commerce found in the initial proposal of Volume 1. The acceptable rebuttal evidence would include evidence that the location does not fall within the definitions of CAIs set by Florida Commerce operation. If the location is not a CAI, this challenge allows a challenger to claim that the location is currently labeled as a CAI, but is a residence, a non-CAI business, or is no longer in operation. The acceptable evidence would indicate the location does not fall within the definitions of CAI set by Florida Commerce, or acceptable rebuttal evidence would show location within the definitions of CAI set by Florida Commerce or is still operational. Now, the area and multi-dwelling unit challenges will be eligible for availability and technology challenge types. An area challenge is triggered if 6 or more broadband serviceable locations from a single provider within a census block using a particular technology or challenge. An MDU challenge requires challenges of at least 25% of total units for MDUs that have fewer than 24 units or at least 6 units for MDUs larger than 24. Area challenges reverse the burden of proof if a defined number of challenges for a particular category across all challengers have been submitted for a single provider. An example is if the provider receiving an area challenge or MDU must demonstrate that it meets availability and technology requirements respectively for all served locations within the area or all units within an MDU. Each type of challenge and each technology provider is considered separately. An example is an availability challenge does not count towards reaching the area threshold for a technology challenge. If a provider offers multiple technologies, such as a digital describer line or DSL and fiber, each is treated separately as they are likely to have different availability and performance. Area challenges must be rebutted with evidence that service is available for all DSLs within the census block. An example is network diagrams that show fiber or hybrid fiber coaxial infrastructure or for fixed wireless, the challenge system will offer a representative random sample of the area in contention, but no fewer than 10, where the provider must demonstrate service availability. Now, I will pass it back over to Jacob to discuss the roles of the LTPTs.
Thank you, Aaron. The LTPTs are not eligible challengers. However, units of local government are eligible. All LTPTs should have local government representatives as members on the team. A member of the team should be designated as a liaison between the LTPT and the local government, which is the eligible challenger. The team will utilize its collective knowledge about the local government and make recommendations for challenges, which will be compiled and sent to the local government challenger by the LTPT local government liaison. Additionally, the LTPT would be responsible for receiving and vetting challenges from individuals. Now, I will pass it over to Josh Hoadley to walk you through a tutorial of the challenge process.
Thank you, Jacob. Please give us a few seconds to transition to our FloridaJobs.org page. You'll now go over the challenge process portal. Give us 1 second to share our screen off of this. We will get started again. My apologies. Okay, what you're going to see is our FloridaJobs.org page. This page should hopefully look familiar to a lot of you. We'll start this off by saying if you have not subscribed for updates, please go ahead and subscribe for updates. We will be sending out key information, very broad level activities related to BEAD. It's a great way to stay informed and know what Florida Commerce is doing as we move throughout the BEAD challenge process. In addition to that, the BEAD challenge process portal is split into two portions. We do have a public-facing portion and a private-facing portion. You can navigate to the public side right here by simply clicking this button, and it'll take us into our GIS hub page. All technology you see today will be built by GIS Technology, utilizing our internet page, our surveys, as well as forms. If you have a GIS team, feel free to reach out to us for any questions or things like that. This will be the public-facing page. It does consist of 3 public web pages, a main page, a resource page, as well as our challenge page. We will not go over the main page or resource page today. These are pages that will persist beyond the challenge process. However, this one will not as the challenge process concludes, but this is a relevant one for today's presentation. Moving right into it, it does start with NTIA information. Our challenge process was built off of NTIA guidelines, specifically the BEAD challenge policy. These documents are swirling around kind of where our brain was at when we made this, so please look at these if you have any questions about kind of technicalities within inside of it. Underneath that will be our process timeline that Leo briefly covered. This timeline will be updated and it will change as we move out the challenge process. We are currently in our registration outreach step. This is an unofficial state-led step. When we begin our challenge process officially on the submission window opening, we will add anticipated dates that we are informed of each of these challenge processes. There will be 119 out of 120. Keep this in mind. This is where this will be updating. Our actual challenge portal, which we will showcase in a minute, does have confidential data that was gathered using proprietary methods. Therefore, anybody participating in the Florida Commerce Connected Florida BEAD program does need to have a CostQuest NTA license. This is not the same as an FCC CostQuest license. A key distinguisher is the letter versus numbers. If you have a 1, 2, 3, 4, that's probably going to be FCC, whereas the A, B, C, D, E are going to be the NTA. BEAD is specifically covered under the NTA license, so you will need both of them. Or rather, you'll need this particularly to participate in BEAD. You do not need the FCC license. We will navigate to this homepage. It is a NTA CostQuest license process. It is not a state-led process. However, we are willing to assist to get you where you need to be for the information. It is free and it does take a few days to process, so please be prompt about acquiring one of these. The state recommends that you read through the table right here for eligible licenses in the description. Pick the one that is most applicable to your entity. We anticipate that all entities participating will generally have a Tier D or a Tier E license. Underneath that, on our page, we do have linked out to the request a Tier D or request a Tier E, as well as the help forms. So this is kind of duplicated between both ours and their licenses. They have wonderful licensing information, in-depth PDFs on how to attain everything for a license. Once again, this is not a state-led process. I do believe that they list out some help information as well on that. Please utilize the help form. If you need help, feel free to reach out to the state because we will try and get you in contact with the proper personnel on their side. Moving out beyond that, with the actual portal eligibility request form. We are vetting this based off the acquisition of an NTA CostQuest license. So you will need to have the above step in order to fill this form out properly. The important part about this form, be gathering the type of entity, the entity ID that's associated with your fabric license tier, so be a Tier D or Tier E license, and then information that the NTA would like us to gather on the organization, such as web page URLs, contact name, emails, and the state has added on a secondary contact. This is important for eligible challengers that may be contracting, receiving consulting support, or even larger entities that need to have 2 people designated for contact related to the BEAD challenge process. When selecting this, it does give the secondary contact authority to kind of administer and be authorized to make requests on behalf of the entity. It is confidential data and proprietary information, so we will kind of be treating it as a closed kind of list based off of this survey itself. And then it finally wraps up with just some terms and conditions that relate to the CostQuest license itself. It is a web page. It does have data on it that is considered confidential. We just want to make sure that you guys are acknowledging that you will help us protect our license as well as yours when it comes to due diligence and proper methodology of handling accounts and sensitive information. Once you click submit, you will get an automated email from the Florida Commerce System. It should be fl.bead@noreply.commerce.fl.gov. This will give you some additional information as well as go over later in this presentation, but it is a great way to just kind of know information. We are finalizing those accounts, so it will be a slight delay. Once again, subscribe to that email list on that floridajobs.org page, because we'll release information related to it. And then on the left here, we do have just some stuff taken from NTA guidance itself of the eligible challengers and residents, and kind of how we're anticipating to run this program. Underneath it, we do have an availability. If you'd like to use a full new window instead of using the embed, feel free to click this URL. And then we are just kind of reiterating that will take a slight delay. Right underneath that is the publication of eligible locations that Mr. Garcia talked about. These will be the locations that are required for NTA as unserved location IDs, underserved location IDs, and the community anchor institution locations. Based on some feedback, we've also added the proposals as well as the state enforceable commitment list. These locations are just location IDs. They don't have any other information attached to them. Since this is a public page, we are limited to what we can post on this. But we'll move into the challenge page to kind of get some additional information. This will require an account and password to sign into. That is what we are doing that registration form for. So once launching into this page, it will require you to have a username and a password. Please keep in mind that this is currently in a demo state. We will fill out some nuances, and this will change slightly as we prepare for the final launch product. Moving right into it, we do have some overview and some important notices just to kind of reiterate some points that were talked at throughout this presentation. We do have a Florida Commerce BEAD Challenge type guide. We are going to put this on the public phase just so people have an idea of the eligible challenges that we are taking. This does have an addendum that has additional information on enforceable commitments and CAI information. In addition, we do have our initial proposal right underneath it. And as we move over to the side, we will put important notices here as they kind of pan out. We are taking the 119 days out of the allowable maximum 120 days. These pages, that just kind of means that we will stick very closely to that process timeline that you saw before. Right after that, we do have an additional link for the portal help form. That is at the bottom of the page. We will go over that once we reach the bottom of the page. Right underneath that, as Jacob kind of mentioned before, we will not be taking speed, data cap, or latency type codes. In addition, the NTA has defined that we cannot fundamentally add or remove BSL locations or adjust no flag BSLs, broadband serviceable locations, under this process. So state of Florida is recommending to use the FCC National Broadband Map. This is not the National Broadband Availability Map. It's not the NBAM, this is NBM. That has a direct right here to that page. Using their challenge process, of BSLs as well as their speed status is what we're recommending. We are currently in communications to seek clarification of BEAD eligibility of changes made throughout our process. Right as of now, the state of Florida is anticipating to shore up at the end of our process to the latest fabric that would incorporate these changes made throughout our challenge process. Before this page goes live, we will have a clarification right underneath that addressing that point that I just said, so we can clarify one way or another on that. Once again, similar to the NTA process, this is not a state-led process. This will be used in FCC's resources, their process they have defined. So feel free to reach out for assistance or help. But as always, the state is there to assist as well, just to get you information as much as we know. So feel free to reach us to it as well. That's just a note on that one. And then we actually have the challenge submission app itself. We will pause and return to this in 1 second. But right underneath it, we do have our bulk challenge and bulk challenge data sets. Because this page is a page that's accessible by having an NTA CostQuest license, these location ID sets will have a little bit more information on location. Just the ID itself becomes confidential, proprietary once we start linking all the information together: location ID, address, speed tier, etc. So these CSVs will be a little bit more kind of beefy. In addition, we will have the bulk CSV templates. In our demonstration, we will go over a bulk challenge, but this is where you can gather the templates from. It will be a CSV scripted process, so it'll be a very straightforward one-page fill out the rows as corresponding information kind of dictates. Kind of some notes on that is we will validate bulk challenges on location IDs. If you submit us location IDs that are not valid based off of our data sets, then you will get an automated email that says, unfortunately, you need to resubmit or make an amend to that. In addition, the bulk challenges cannot exceed 100 or 1,000 rows per submission. We are not capping the numbers of submission, but just the amount of rows per submission. Just like the IDs, you will get an email back that says, please resubmit, or kind of amend some data in there. And then we'll return to our challenge process. You're welcome to use the embed on the page. However, for this demonstration, We're going to go ahead and open this inside of a new window. So right off the bat, we do have kind of a navigation. We've grouped it apart by location challenge and CAI challenges because they are different data sets. Our location challenge is going to be taken from the BDC from middle of May and the BSL Fabric version 4. So this is what the National Broadband Map is key to at this moment. So there should be not a lot of differences between the two. As we progress, there may be a few changes to the BDC that's released bi-weekly. We'll go ahead and kind of address those. So right off the bat, this is a single select A and T type challenges. The single selects were built in mind for the kind of the LTPs, counties, to kind of help get some information across, as it is completely address driven. So you will not need to convert addresses to location IDs if you use a single select. For example, we will go ahead and put in our building here in Tallahassee, 107 East Madison Street. And then we're going to select Tallahassee. It does zoom you into the location that is the BSL point. Unfortunately, we are not a mass market BSL, so we are not included on here, but we will select this area to the right of us. What it's going to do is we're going to follow these steps on the right where we select our location. We have selected this BSL, and then we are going to select our ISP that serves it. We're going to select the top one, and then we're going to initiate the challenge. Because it is set up to crosswalk information over related to addresses, we are not going to actually select this challenge. The process is identical almost to the CAI challenge type code that does not have confidential information. So we're just going to kind of move over to there after this. But this is how you would do a challenge. It will pop up a form that you would fill out. And then once you press submit, you will receive an email that lets you know what your challenge ID is, as well as corresponding information that we need to collect. But keep in mind, this is for availability and technology type code challenges. Moving into CAI for the single map select. It's going to be much similar, almost identical process to our location challenges. We're going to go ahead and select a location. We can also filter on top of here. So for this one, we're going to go ahead and select, I'm going to go down to Leon County in Tallahassee. And then we want to look at all of our health type codes. So we're going to press H on there. We're going to zoom in, or we could type a location if we like, but we're going to zoom in and we're going to select one of these random locations. In the same process as AT challenge, we're going to go ahead and select it, and then we're going to initiate the challenge. It will pull up a survey 123 form. This is selected from information that's required by the NTIA. It'll let us know our challenge type that we're selecting, and it will crosswalk information over. So you'll have location IDs and things like that for the actual BSL BDC derived data. Underneath it will be all the information it does pull over, and then the rationale. For our example, we're going to say they're no longer in business, so we're going to say they've ceased operation. We go down to here, we're going to explain what happened is they're gone. And our CAIR evidence will be as defined by the NTIA table, but maybe it's a picture of their website that says they no longer exist at this location, or they just completely ceased operations entirely. And after that, submit button. At that point, you'll receive a confirmation email. It will give you a challenge ID, like I mentioned. If you need help or you want to know the status or you need to make an edit or such, you can let us know that ID so we can kind of get efficient. And then moving back into our challenges, we'll go ahead and do the CAI Type C challenge. We are exploring the potentially doing a bulk for this, but we will let kind of the public know as we kind of see on the software side. But as of now, it is a single submit. For this one, we're not going to allow, but you can allow that. Essentially, we're declaring a new CAI location. So we go ahead and we zoom in on our map. We would select a location. Once we plot a point on here, it will pull the latitude and longitude that we need to supply to the NTIA. Underneath that, we would go ahead and select our type. We're going to say that it's a school. We will move through, we put the information in, as well as entity, FCC registration, location ID, street address, city. These that are not kind of required information, you do not need to put a location ID for a location that is not fundamentally within the fabric. So just keep that in mind. And moving right, also the speed and the availability that is required. And then finally, we do have rationale and rationale explanation. And then we submit our evidence by the NTIA. And then finally, we'll go over bulk challenges on CSVs. CSVs will be formatted off of those templates that you saw on the first page. As soon as we get those, we'll put those out. They're pretty straightforward. You're just going to fill out the location ID and any corresponding information required by the challenge type. We would select it. Let's say we're going to do an availability. We fill out the CSV related to availability. We would upload the CSV, and then we would upload an evidence file that is relating to that availability challenge. We request that the evidence file be merged, whether it be a PDF, just putting all the pictures into one collection and submitting that as a whole. It will run a validation script on this, and you will receive an automated email whether or not it reaches validation. It will not be instantaneous, and we will put that in the email. It will probably go into a 24-hour just curing phase where we go ahead and run some scripts, do some validation, some manual stuff required by the NTIA process, and go from there. But this is at a very high level, the challenge process submission. So we will bounce out. We'll go to kind of some FAQs related to it. So this is what Leo was talking about, having the living FAQs. As we receive information and questions, we hear it one time, we hear it 2 times, we hear it 3 times. We're going to add this to this FAQ list. So keep an eye on here, and if you have a question, it's a great place to start. It will let us know things as questions about the BEAD timeline. What challenge data do we use? Currently, this demo was built off of version 3.2 using March 19th. However, when we release it, it will be on version 4, as well as some submission methods, some FCC information. A lot of this information is taken from the NTA guidance, as well as taken from the initial proposal that's been approved by the NTA. That is our initial proposal, volume 1, that relates to the challenge process. We are still awaiting approval of volume 2, but a lot of it is kind of pulled out of there. You're welcome to read that. I believe it's around 33, 34 pages, or you're welcome to come to this and kind of see some pulled out information. It just has some great information if you need it. And we'll kind of conclude with, we have resources. These will be updated to kind of include more robust data sets and map-centric BEAD challenge process to kind of help you throughout the process. But just keep an eye on these resources. And finally, we have the challenge portal help form. This form is available through multiple emails as well as on this page in several locations. It is intended to essentially get direct information to our GIS team that deals with our BEAD challenge process. You're welcome to email the broadband@commerce.fl.gov. However, be aware that we get a lot of emails. It may take time for us to process information related to that. This is intended to specifically be on the BEAD challenge process itself. We fill out some information on here. For our example, we're going to be Florida Commerce that is attempting to edit a submission that we put in. So we'll change, we'll just call it Florida. Oh, we'll actually use our broadband email. Commerce.fl.gov. And then please fill out any information, even if not required, because it's intended for us to be able to contact you in the most efficient way possible. So we'll say I'm best contactable by phone. It is every step of the challenge process. It is the portal account. It is a submission. It is a rebuttal determination. And then if that's not captured, it does have another option on there. For us, we are going to be submitting or editing a submission that we've already made. We will click a submission on there. It will ask you some filter questions, reaching out about help submitting a challenge, or reaching out about help a challenge I previously submitted. We're going to say that we previously submitted because we need to edit it. It's going to ask us for a challenge ID. We can say our challenge ID is 1234. And then we need to edit a submission. And we can say maybe that we fat fingered DSL location. ID 1 is meant to be ID 2. In this example, this would be something that we could almost completely streamline. There'd be little to minimal reaching out on here. It just allows us, instead of having to have a thread of 6 to 7 emails, we can kind of narrow it down to one form. It has some submittal information, and you will receive an email off of there as well. But it does have a bunch of information. It does have just generalized information if you do need a little bit of help. If you have questions about CostQuest licenses, things like that, it also does help in the sense that we can put a portal account, let us know that we have not signed up for an account. And in addition, for the submitting a rebuttal and a challenge submission, it does have the option to set up a working session with us. So keep that in mind as well. But with that, that kind of concludes at a very high level what this page will be. This page will be live before we actually take challenge submissions. It will just be a coming soon off of here. That way you have some time to explore this page. The BEAD challenge resource and main page is public now, so feel free to play with that, as well as we'll drop some contact information if you have any further questions. But with that, I'll hand it back to Leo to address the FAQ portion of this webinar.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate the time. As Josh mentioned, we're readily available to take any questions or assistance you may need as it relates to the challenge process, specifically related to the portal that we're building. We'll take a brief pause now to review the questions that have already been received thus far. And then as a reminder, if you would, please type your questions into the chat feature and we'll address those accordingly. If your questions doesn't get addressed, please email them to broadband@commerce.fl.gov. We'll take a few minutes, review the questions, and we'll come right back. Thank you. All right, welcome back. We did receive a few questions during that brief pause. Again, if you do have questions, please type them into the chat feature. The first question that came in, what type of submittal would a provider submit if they were challenging that they have existing service to any location listed on unserved or underserved list, as there were inaccurate with prior FCC BDC reporting?
All right, I'll take this one. It kind of depends on the challenge that you're kind of wanting to make. If it's service that's already been provided, then it's going to fall into speed eligibility. If it's availability where it did not exist before, meaning it's unserved, completely 0-0, you can make an availability challenge through the state's speed challenge process. That would just say, hey, this location didn't have us before, it has us now. If it's something related to speed where maybe it was served at eligible kind of speeds beneath serve status, and now it is serve status, that is where the state is going to direct towards that FCC national broadband map to challenge that side. If it's service that has not been laid at all, that's anticipated for future, that's going to be probably planned service or planned deployment. If it's outside of one of the state or federal grant programs.
Thanks, Josh. Next question. Will a local government or LTPT need the Tier D or E license? It seems like it should be Tier D, but Tier E specifically lists local governments.
So that's kind of a twofold question with that one. LTPs themselves are not an entity that's eligible for an FRN. So therefore, an LTPT would not be able to get mentioned to kind of get the license underneath the local government. So local government would need to probably, once again, it kind of depends on the activities. If it plans to kind of have disbursement of funds, that's when a Tier DE license becomes applicable. If you're just participating in the BEAD challenge process, that Tier E license is more applicable. So a kind of question I think for the state is, do you intend to participate only in the challenge process, or do you anticipate in funding and the challenge process? If it's the latter, then go ahead and I would say get a Tier D.
Thanks. Next question. Will there be a video of this session made available? I'll take that one. Yes. As soon as we conclude, we'll wrap up the video and we'll have it posted within 2 business days on our website. So please feel free to visit that by end of week at the latest, but it should be there no later than Wednesday. Again, if you have not done so thus far, please subscribe for updates on that link at our www.florida.org/broadband website. All right, next question. Will the state share a database with local governments on the specific locations that are excluded in unserved, underserved due to other state or federal funding?
Yes, so we actually have that publication of eligible locations on the website now. That should have location IDs inside of that enforceable commitment CSV. That is what the state recognizes as any known state or federal programs. And if you're participating in our challenge process, you will get access to kind of more in-depth information beyond just location IDs, where maybe you can kind of match it and pair it a little easier. But to kind of answer the question, yes, we will go ahead and release what we know. In addition, we will be changing some symbology on that BEAD challenge map. We're going to have 3 colors for submissions. It's going to be BEAD eligible, non-BEAD eligible, and then state enforceable commitment eligible. The NTA is requiring that the state submit all enforceable commitments that it knows of, basically meaning any federal or state contracts that we're inside of or have knowledge of as its own challenge. These will be rebuttable, but in addition, if you don't see that a challenge is fully represented, feel free to challenge those locations, feel free to challenge on top of those, add additional locations, but we're just letting you guys know what we are going to be challenging. That challenge will go through as we've deemed it valid, so you will be able to rebut it, but that's just kind of an extra layer as we kind of get into the actual challenge submissions itself.
Thanks, Josh. Next question. Is there an approximate date for the start of the challenge phase? I'll take this one. If you go back to the timeline, the timeline on the actual presentation, the dates are listed there, but in days. So once we officially launch the program, Those days will then turn to actual dates. So I'm not sure if we can maybe change to the timeline page so folks can look at that. So we do anticipate kicking the program off towards the end of June or early July, maybe after the holiday. But again, we will post that date and through that submission of requesting access to those updates. So please, if you haven't done so, another plug, please subscribe for updates as that information will be relayed based off of that. So there you go. Next question. Will the enforceable commitments file be accounted for in unserved or underserved list, or will they be distinct?
They will be distinct. What you see up there right now is essentially we had a BEAD eligible and a non-BEAD eligible list. We split the BEAD eligible into what you see on the public facing website that is unserved, and then the additional CSV that is underserved and DSL modification. So any location has been phased out, technology code type 10, namely copper. And then the enforceable commitments does not overlap with that. So that CSV is distinct. Yeah. So it's not going to be any duplicate IDs in there. There shouldn't be.
Thanks, Josh. Where will we find the FCC IDs for challenge or rebuttal purposes? Do you anticipate any changes to the FCC IDs through the 120-day process?
So we are currently locked in with our IDs. We're on that version Fabric 4, so fundamentally no BSL IDs should change. Afterwards, NTA does have processes built in where we will be deduplicating as well as shoring up to information from the next page or from the next versions. So there may be some changes there, but nothing that would affect during the challenge process, things that will probably carry over at the conclusion of the process. So FCC ID BSL locations will stay the same. We'll release data sets. That way you're not downloading data sets and having issues with that. Since it's on the version 4, we don't anticipate that would change anyways. But you never know. So we're going to release some data sets that have it as well. I think that's one of the resources we intend to put on that page is almost entirely putting the foundation of the data that we built the challenge process off of as available for kind of you guys to get in, tinker with, export data, put some filter expressions on there, just do some fun stuff with it.
Thank you. When will the location file be available for download? Not sure if they're referencing the stuff that's already posted.
Yeah, if you're talking about the eligible publications, that is live. Go to our floridajobs.org page, navigate to the broadband. We'll post that in the chat box, as well as we'll post the URL to the actual public BEAD page. It's the BEAD challenge page. At the bottom of that is the files that the NTIA, we submitted to NTIA. That includes the unserved, the underserved, and the CAI locations, as well as based on some feedback, the enforceable commitments. And then as we move into the actual challenge process and get accounts out to eligible challengers, we'll release more data sets to them specifically, based off the knowledge that we know that they have an NTA cost quest license, so we can share that confidential data with them. But right now, all location IDs that will be a part of the challenge process are live.
Perfect. You set a max limit of 1,000 rows for challenge. Is there guidelines on labeling the files?
So there will not be a guideline for actual naming submission at this point. As we do some more UAT permission testing, we'll see off of that. I'd say do a naming convention that you're familiar with. That way you can easily reference back to it. But as far as the information inside of it, it's all going to be kind of unique based on location IDs, the BSL location IDs related to them. But I don't think we're going to do a naming convention requirement. That may change, but we will give plenty of guidance on that.
Awesome. Next question, we've already touched on this, but I'll repeat it again. When is the anticipated 120-day start date? We anticipate towards the end of the month and or maybe by the end of the holiday weekend after July 4th. So the next couple of weeks, you'll see that launching. For the portal eligibility request form, is the entity ID the FRN, EIN number, or something else?
So it's going to be the entity ID assigned to you by the NTIA that correlates to the license, the Tier D, Tier E license. I have to double check to see the FRN if they speak to each other. But we can get back on that one. But it will be specifically the entity ID that the NTA assigns off of that. So we'll clarify that and we'll put that on the form. That's kind of a note on there. So I just made that a little easier.
How quickly will the challenge or rebuttal decision be made?
So we are going to hold all challenge. So the overall challenge determination will be made at the end of both valid submissions. So the challenge submission process, we are going to hold until the end of the 45 days. At the end of that processing buffer is when we will essentially go through and trigger any area or MDU challenges and make sure that everything is valid. We'll be doing some light curing as they're submitted that scripting does not catch. But the beginning challenge submission phase is only to test the validity of a challenge, not the actual adjudication of it. And then once we say it's valid, it will go through to a rebuttal. We will have 45 days of whoever was challenged. If it's a type A or T type code, only providers can respond that were challenged against it. If it's an N, P, or E type code, then anybody can challenge. So there'll be kind of a flare of two areas to challenge locations at. If you're not a provider, a broadband service provider, internet service provider, then you'll not see that kind of A or T type challenge code. You'll only see the EN or P code and the CAIs on that as well. But once a rebuttal is submitted against that challenge within that 45 days, we can go ahead and make a determination on it. We have allowed ourselves 15 additional days beyond the rebuttal window to catch any kind of last minute rebuttal responses so we can process those properly, make sure they're getting the attention they deserve. Then right after that, we have both parts of the piece. We'll go ahead and make a determination. We'll make a determination list and then officially submit it to the NTIA, and that concludes our challenge process officially.
Thanks for that, Josh. Again, reminder, if you do have questions, please type them into the chat feature. That was currently our last received question thus far. So we'll give it a couple minutes. If you want to submit a question through the chat, we'll address those. Seeing that there are no additional questions, we want to thank you all for joining us today to discuss Connected Florida's BEAD Challenge Process webinar. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and we will have the recording with closed captioning and the slide deck posted on our website at www.floridajobs.org/broadband within 2 business days. If you have any additional comments or questions, please contact us at broadband@commerce.fl.gov. Thank you again.